Hello, guys and ghouls, and welcome back to another year of Halloween in April. That one time a year when we are so deprived of spooks and scares and general creepiness that we must delve back in for just one day to fill the well of eeriness until that season comes back again. And this year, I have a very special video. Actually, it's not that serious. I'm really excited about it, for real. I've been wanting to do this one for a long time. So all of the last couple of months, I've been trying to figure out what I wanted to do for my Halloween in April review or ranking or video, and I finally came up with what I wanted to do because I actually got to finish all the Tim Burton movies. Sort of. We'll get to that in a minute. So I figured I want to talk about them all, even if briefly, so I'm going to rank them because I got a lot of thoughts on them now that I have finally gotten through just about all of pretty much everything that he's done. Tim Burton, as you know, is one of the most unique directors working today. He hasn't done as much lately, but he's still working, and he's definitely still putting out his very dark, gloomy style. His is one of the most recognizable and one of the most parodied because of just how unique and creepy and weird it is. He is the director who has basically made Halloween movies a genre. Even if it's not about Halloween, it's something that you can watch at Halloween because of his very trademark, iconic, gothic look. Dark, eerie settings, bags under people's eyes, stripes. They just look depressed. They look a little bit off and creepy. But the thing that I noticed recently is that is actually not his only style. If he's not doing dark and creepy, he's actually doing the exact opposite, which is very bright and sunny and a little bit too colorful, and the people in town are a little bit too nice. There's definitely a handful of movies where he has the most perfect suburban neighborhood, with every house just right, every yard perfectly matching, the sidewalks, the streets, everything looking a little bit too utopian. It gives you almost the same exact feeling of unease and uncanniness that the gothic dark stuff does. And I think that's really, really cool. Now, a couple things before we get into the actual list. This, honestly, is not even just a recognition of Tim Burton, but of Danny Elfman as well, because I think Danny Elfman has done the scores to almost every, if not every movie that Tim Burton has made. He has made some of the most iconic, gothic, eerie scores of all time. He's just a genius. The other thing is that this ranking is only going to consist of movies that Tim Burton has directed, not produced or had a hand in, but directed. So we will obviously not be talking about Alice Through the Looking Glass, for more reasons than just that. But unfortunately, as much as I love it, that means that we will not be ranking Nightmare Before Christmas. But I can tell you that, it would have been number one. I mean, let's be real. That would top everything else. For sure. And I've already talked about it, so it really doesn't matter. Now, one more thing before we get into the actual list, or should I say two more things. There are a couple of things that Tim Burton has done that are not feature-length. And of course, he's done the TV show Wednesday, and he has season 2 coming out this year. But I've already talked about Wednesday at length. I've done a whole video on that, so you can go and watch that one. But he actually has done 2 other shorts that I didn't even know existed until I went to do this video. The first is Hansel and Gretel, and this is available on YouTube to watch if you want to have nightmares. He actually did this for Disney. He used to work at Disney, and this was the first thing, as far as I can tell, that he has ever done where he was credited as the director. There's not much to say about this except beware, because this is some weird shit. It's a little bit not psychedelic, but it's definitely just odd. It's unsettling, and not in the ways that most of his other stuff is, because those are unsettling in a very comfortable way. This is just, weird. It's definitely the story of Hansel and Gretel, but it's gotten a lot of liberties with it. It definitely just feels like one of those student films that, was just shot real quick in one day with minimal sets, but he put his own flair in there still because of just how odd it is. So, Hansel and Gretel is available on YouTube if you so choose to scar yourself for just a little bit. It's not terrible, but it is just weirder than I thought it would have been. But, no one even really knows that even exists. Unlike the next one that I want to talk about real quick, which is Frankenweenie. Now, Frankenweenie is obviously a Tim Burton feature film, but he did in 1984 a version of Frankenweenie that was a short for Disney. And the funniest thing that I find about this is what got him kicked out of Disney. This nice, kind of wholesome little gothic story about a kid who brings his dog back to life. And not the creepy, terrifying Hansel and Gretel that he did for Disney. I'm not sure why this one got him kicked out of the studio and not the first one. And I actually watched this very recently as part of the last couple of things I needed to do for this video. And I have to say, I really liked it. I didn't think it was going to be all that good. You know, I thought it would be very, very old and dated and not that great. But it was really interesting. The first thing that shocked me was that it's actually got a pretty well-known cast, specifically Shelley Duvall and Daniel Stern. So that was pretty cool. I didn't really expect that. I mean, it is a Disney product, but still, I did not expect that. Now, I did like this a lot because, yeah, it's basically what the feature film is that expanded on this story, but it's really just the bare bones of that story, basically taking Frankenstein and, you know, making it about a kid and his dog. So there's that very wholesome aspect still. And of course, because it's Disney, it's just the whole thing feels kind of nice, even though it is about this sort of dark concept. And they still have all of those, you know, the parents come in, they're like, "Good night, son, we'll be right down the hall." And I thought that was just really funny, you know, like it's a nice, comforting little thing to watch during Halloween. Something else I didn't expect, though, was that it actually feels, at least for maybe the first 10 minutes, definitely feels like he took a little bit of inspiration from E.T., which had come out only 2 years before that. And so I think that was really cool that in specifically some of the shot compositions as well, but the story as a whole, it definitely feels like there's some E.T. in there a little bit. It does end pretty quickly, like it ramps up very fast, and the ending, especially with the neighbors, feels like it gets a little bit ridiculous, like a little over the top. I think the funniest thing is that they are scared of this dog, not because he's brought back to life. I'm pretty sure they don't even know that at first. I'm fairly certain it's just because they think he's really big, just a big dog. This is a very nice, fun little, 26-minute Disney short that you can watch around Halloween. Okay, now that we have gotten all the preliminary stuff out of the way and all of his shorts,
it's showtime.
Starting with number 20, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Now here's the thing.
I've got another confession to make.
I did say that I almost got through all of Tim Burton's movies, and obviously that's why I'm doing this video. The almost is that I have not seen all of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I've seen a good bit of it, but I've seen enough. Just from the scenes that I have watched, I don't think I could stand this entire movie. In fact, I think I would, actively hate this movie. And I didn't watch the rest of it, because I knew it was going to be at number 20, and I wasn't going to put myself through that. I don't like Pee Wee Herman. I think he is annoying as shit. Paul Reubens creeps me out, and it just doesn't really seem like Tim Burton really was in his stride yet, or into what he really got into with his style yet. Yes, there are the very bright, sickening colors and the overly exaggerated people and all of that for sure, but it still does feel different. It doesn't feel like some of his later stuff or when he was really in the prime. And so I was okay with kind of skipping the rest of it because I tell you what, I watched this scene, the breakfast scene. If he made one more sound one more time, I was gonna throw myself away. I couldn't stand it. If I had to give something of a positive for the movie that I did find, I thought in that scene the contraptions were cool. It's a cool idea, even if it does seem very dated. Maybe I'll go back and watch the full thing. Maybe. But I can guarantee you it would not top anything else on this list. So let's just leave it at that and move on. At number 19, Planet of the Apes. The funny thing is from here on out, pretty much every movie, there is definitely something I can find that I liked about it, if not loved. And Planet of the Apes is one that I thought was going to be terrible. People just kept saying it sucked or it wasn't really that good. It was passable, you can skip it. And I can definitely see where they're coming from. But there were definitely parts of this movie that I really liked, specifically the first act to maybe the first, two acts of the movie, because I very much liked all the sets and the feeling that it had of kind of being reminiscent of these 80s sci-fi movies, Like, it really felt like even though it might be feeling like it's a little bit of a set, I feel like I've mentioned this in a couple of videos very recently, but these movies where it definitely feels like it's a set, but it feels like it's still more real than a lot of what we get today. And I really liked the jungle setting for this. There is a purpose for this movie, because we have the old one, which is very dated and a little bit drier. You have the new ones, which are much sleeker and a whole story, a whole epic, of how they rose to being the Planet of the Apes and up to the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This is kind of right in the middle. And I think it does serve that purpose of being a little bit of each. Even if it does, at a certain point, start to feel like a sci-fi channel made-for-TV movie. And the fact that I don't really think that Mark Wahlberg is that good of an actor. He's fine. He's fine. He's passable. But there's nothing that really, for me, stands out about him, especially in these kind of roles. But I did like the tone that was set up in the first bit of it when we're being introduced to this whole world and this whole society of the apes. And I really do appreciate also that they are physical. They're not CGI. They're like physical costumes, because it actually looked really good. I was surprised, but it looks really good. So there are definitely things to like about this one. It just doesn't feel really like a Tim Burton movie. There's some things, Helena Bonham Carter's in it for one. Paul Giamatti is in it, and he is great. I loved him in that. There's no way you could miss that that's him. There's definitely things about this that I did like. It's not his best one by far, but, it's okay. It's a very passable movie with a sort of interesting, but kind of dumb if you think about it for more than 2 seconds, twist at the end. At number 18, Batman Returns. For people who really like these Batman movies, you're going to be pretty disappointed in me. And I'm not going to lie, I actually was debating for a while whether this was going to be 19 and Planet of the Apes would be 18. Because when I think about this one, it's just so dark and cold and gray and blue. And the thing is that it's like, well, yeah, that's every Tim Burton movie. What are you talking about? But this one was, different. It's I like the tone in some aspects. It's really cool to have just such a dark, shadowy Gotham. That's what it's supposed to be. But I liked that more in the original Batman. This one felt like it just took it too far, it was too dark. It was too grimy and creepy and weird for Batman. There are things about it, again, that I do like. I think that for what they were going for, the villains, Danny DeVito and Michelle Pfeiffer, do a really great job at, their respective roles. And I think it's always interesting to see how Tim Burton is going to take a certain character. But I just wasn't really that interested for most of this movie. I just thought it was kind of boring at a certain point, and a lot of it has to revolve around these political agendas and everything. And there's Max Schreck in there, who is kind of more of the main villain, with these two on the side. There's nothing really that unique about him, aside from the fact that he's Christopher Walken. And because we'd already had the novelty of the first one, this one felt like it had to rise above that. And for me, it just doesn't. There's still some cool things. I like a lot of the style of the Penguin's cave and how he's got the big rubber duck and he's got the penguins following. It's a very unique take. It's a very Penguin accurate take. I just don't think that it's his best, and I think he went a little too dark, which is why he didn't return for the next one. That seems to be a big trend, that he goes a little bit too dark for a company and then they kick him out. And Frankenweenie, I think maybe not so much, but this one I can kind of see where they were going. At number 17, Dumbo. This is one of them that I think people probably will find more forgettable, but it's not really Tim Burton's fault. It is a Disney live action. This is one of the ones that honestly I think is a little bit more underrated, but at the end of the day, it's a Disney live action. And I think it's cool that, Disney, for a couple of these, let him come back to do some of these movies. I guess they kind of came around to his style, and he softened up a little bit, especially with this one, because there is a lot of wholesomeness to this one, especially with Colin Farrell being in it. All of these characters that he plays in Disney movies are so great. He's got that softness to him, except for when he's playing, funny enough, the Penguin.
Holy God, what are you showing me? His head. Come on!
I think that there was actually a good amount of stuff that Tim Burton did in this one that made it feel not just like a regular Disney live action, which by this point was starting to get stale. Now it's like we're far past them, obviously. Then they were just sort of churning them out, and they were fine. They weren't great, they weren't horrible, but they were fine. And I think having Tim Burton do this was a good choice because it being circusy and it being a little bit odder, he could do some stuff with it that felt very much his aesthetic, and it would work really well and still be a good Disney movie for the whole family to go see. And again, all of the circus acts, the elephants and the pink elephants and all of that, I think he did it very well for what Disney needed. It's still kind of safe, but it was a good adaptation of a very, very old Disney movie. And Michael Keaton is, once again, another character in a Burton movie, and once again does a very good job. So Dumbo's fine. It's just nowhere near his best ones because, consider the source. It's just a Disney live action. He's not going to be able to do much with it more than he already can with his own style. I liked it enough. At number 16, Dark Shadows. Now, this one was interesting because I didn't watch this one until last year, and I always thought, okay, so it's going to be a generic Tim Burton movie. It doesn't look like it's that interesting of a concept. It looks like it's maybe a little bit stupid. Just from the trailer, I just thought this looks like it's going to be generic and not that interesting. Weirdly enough, I was right and wrong because it is a little bit more interesting than I thought it was going to be in some aspects, in terms of his character, in terms of how violent and creepy he actually is. I was very wrong. There's a lot of scenes where he's tearing people apart, and that was really cool. But then he's also got this classiness to him, so there was a lot of things in this one that actually were very classic Tim Burton, and maybe it wasn't the most unique thing he's done, but it was still very cool. There's certain creature reveals later on that happened that I was like, whoa, I didn't even expect that was going to be in this movie. There's a lot of that very standard Tim Burton stuff in here. The problem for me was that later in the movie, the plot gets both convoluted and boring. There's a lot of plots and subplots that are going on in this movie, and I feel like it kind of was a little bit messy. They didn't exactly know how to wrap things up, where to go with it, how to order things. I think they put too much in. And the main plot of the movie of them, kind of try to reinvigorate this business and start it back up again on an island, I just didn't really think that was interesting. I don't know. Maybe it was just me, but I thought it was, kind of a boring plot to go with for a vampire movie. Again, I did think it was pretty cool that he was this vampire that was kind of reasonable for some people, especially with his own family, and he did feel a lot of these emotions, but still under the umbrella of generic Tim Burton movie that at the end of the day is still at least passable because it's generic Tim Burton style, and I will always take that over something that's actually just terrible. At number 15, Mars Attacks. This was Tim Burton's spoof on sci-fi alien movies from the 80s, and I thought it was great. It was really, really fun, a good time, and it's definitely not something that you would feel immediately is a Tim Burton movie. There's a little bit of that in there. I love that whole spoof, types of movies. And I love when you can do that, especially with, alien movies. Like, recently, I don't know if it's necessarily a spoof that you can call it, but we had Asteroid City from Wes Anderson. And all of those, in the desert, Area 51, alien invasions, trying to communicate with them. That's always really fun. At the end of the day, this movie gets a little bit stupid, but that's kind of its point. You know that going into it, that it's going to be a little bit over the top and just ridiculous and cartoonish. And the alien design is very cartoonish, but it's really iconic. That's one of those that I didn't even know it was from that until I watched the movie, but I'd always seen that design. And it's just got a really stacked cast. So this was a very enjoyable sort of mainstream movie for Tim Burton to have done. And I just had a good time with it, being a kind of a parody of a lot of these other movies. There's going to be all these jokes in there that it's like, oh, I get it. You're referencing that. It's pretty good. Pretty sneaky, Tim Burton. And again, yeah, it gets a little bit ridiculous towards the end. And that's where I sort of checked out a little bit. But the atmosphere that he sets up, although different from a lot of what he does, was very fun. At number 14, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I own this book, and I still have not yet read it. I know that a lot of people have read this book, and they had certain issues with changes that they made to the movie, but for me that doesn't really affect because I haven't read the book yet. From what I did see, I like this concept and this setting a lot. It's always fun to have a school or a home for just kids who have all these different powers or oddities or abnormalities. That's always a really fun setup, especially because then you're going to get this hurrah at the end where all the kids have to band up and either use their powers or learn that their powers are okay to have, and that they have a purpose and they are loved, to defeat a villain. And that is exactly what happens here. But of course, again, we get the Tim Burton style over top of it. And there's just some very cool scenes in here, specifically the Run Rabbit, phonograph and the missile being dropped and, them turning back time and everything. That whole scene, for me, is definitely my favorite. But there was definitely a lot of cool stuff in here. It's not the most polished one that he's done because I think story-wise, I know they were cramming some things together, so there was a couple things that felt sort of out of place, or some scenes that just felt like, I don't know why we're going back and forth. It felt a little like, yeah, we are kind of combining the events of a couple different stories here. But it was really cool to see how they use all of their powers and how they relate to each other and connect with each other. And of course, having Eva Green as Miss Peregrine herself, I always kind of thought that she was like the dark gothic Miss Frizzle, and she was very cool. I loved her in this role, and kind of being that one that you can tell sort of has the know on everything, and she's got this. She's got it all under control. It's very cool. Just a lot of really cool creature designs in the movie. Lots of great scenes between the kids. Overall, it's a very fun one, if not just a little bit structurally unsound. At number 13, Big Eyes. This is absolutely, definitely agreed upon as Tim Burton's most normal movie. It's basically just like telling of a true story with a little bit of Tim Burton flair in there where needed in a couple scenes. Otherwise, it's kind of just like a regular movie. And to that end, I do think it's one of his best. The reason it's lower on the list in the second half still is that there's just others that I personally love way more. And this one being so normal, it doesn't stand out as much. But I think he does a very good job at this one because it showed that he could do drama and, all these based on true story movies in a way where it's like you don't have to worry about him making it so odd. He can do it just right because there are parts in the movie where he, does have a little bit of that style in there, specifically when it comes to the big eyes in the paintings and how the main character's mentality is reflected with that. Like there's the scene where she sees all the people at the store and they all have the big iconic eyes that she puts on her paintings. And it's like that works. Him putting that little bit in there is effective enough because it's not over everything, but it's effective enough. The other thing about the movie that makes it so good is the performances by Amy Adams and Christoph Waltz, both of whom are always good in anything that they're in. They put it up to 100% in this one as well. It's just a really solid movie. At number 12, Beetlejuice. This is Tim Burton's most recent movie that came out just last year. I probably would have put it lower if I'm basing it just off quality, but what's going to give it the edge here is that it is part of the Beetlejuice world, and we're back to these characters, back to these settings. It was very fun to go see, especially because I saw it at the drive-in. All of the references and all of the fun world stuff that you get from the first one again. So that's what's going to put it over for me. I have talked about the movie at length in another video, so you can go watch that one for all of my thoughts on it. But if you watch that, you know that I kind of like a lot of other people thought there was too much crammed into this movie. They did not know exactly where they wanted to go with it or what they wanted to do. They kind of just wrapped things up very quickly. It seems sort of all over the place. It is, quality-wise, probably not as good as the last maybe one or two or maybe even three movies that I mentioned, but because it's the fact that it's Beetlejuice and we're returning to that world and those characters, that is what gave it a little bit of a bump up for me, but it's still lower on the list just because, again, it's not, for being as long as it has been, I thought they would have come up with something a little bit tighter, but I still had a lot of fun and enjoyed it a lot. Apparently, though, I just heard, as of a couple days ago, that they are rumored to be making Beetlejuice 3, which we hope would be called Beetlejuice, but, who knows? That'll be the most confusing series to ever talk about which ones you've seen. Hopefully, if it is true, they can tighten it up a little bit for that next one. At number 11, Frankenweenie. Now, this one is probably, if Big Eyes was his most normal movie, I think this is the most neutral, standard Tim Burton movie. This is exactly what you think of when you think of Tim Burton. It's black and white. It's stop motion. It's creepy. It's got wholesome moments, but it's also got, very disturbing moments, especially for a kid's movie. But it's still right in the middle there for me, because if I was going to show a Tim Burton movie to somebody to be like, this is what his stuff is like, I would probably go to this one first, because it's a good starter one, and it's the most normal of Tim Burton's in terms of showing what he does and what his style is. And again, like I mentioned earlier, this is the feature-length extended version of the short that he made of Frankenweenie, and it's very cool because, he gets to expand on things a little bit more than just in 26 minutes, and he gets to add elements like all the other pets that are in the neighborhoods and all the other kids that are in the neighborhood and how their pets sort of are affected by everything that's going on. It's a little bit quiet, actually, which is why it's a really good one. I don't want to say to fall asleep to, but it's a little bit more of his comforting side of movies. It does unfortunately make it so that, like, if you're watching it late at night, you probably will fall asleep. But I really like those creepy, quiet, very old monster movies, and I think that was the tone and the level of volume that he was going for in this. So, it's standard Tim Burton, and that's exactly what I want. It just means that it doesn't, blow me away, but I still love it for exactly what it is. All right, on to the top half, number 10, Batman, 1989. I know, a lot of people are gonna be like, are you serious? Like, it's still number 10 right in the middle. This is Batman we're talking about. And I know, I get it. I have to admit something.
I've got another.
I don't love Tim Burton's Batman movies. I mean, obviously we already talked about Batman Returns, but even the original, I definitely like it way more, but I don't love them. They are iconic, and there are things that I do really like about them. The suit, Michael Keaton, the, again, smoky sort of Gotham setting that feels like it's a stage set, which is really cool. And Jack Nicholson as the Joker is iconic. He's, obviously, after Heath Ledger and maybe Joaquin Phoenix, he's in the running for best Joker representation, for sure. There's a lot that I like about this movie. I just like other Batman movies more, and it's a little bit dated at times. That being said, for being basically the first representation of Batman that we got after the Adam West stuff and all the little TV shows and everything that were like the 60s, the sort of cartoonish, very lighthearted, this really set the tone for what Batman could be and what he is in the comics for movies. I mean, that's just like a huge undertaking to have to really do that right. And Tim Burton did an amazing job with that. And I think this is where we can really start to talk about Danny Elfman's scores, because he made the iconic Batman theme. There's been a couple of them now, but this one, I think, for a lot of people still stands as the most iconic, most recognizable. That's Batman. And I'll say, too, that this was a movie that I watched when I was a kid. This, again, was one of the first Tim Burton movies I ever watched. And I remember being so creeped out by Jack Nicholson, and when he falls into the vat and he's got the permanent smile. It really does the trick for, if you're a kid, this is going to creep you out. It's going to give you those really eerie feelings, even though it's Batman. And if you're going to do a superhero movie and have it be Tim Burton, it's going to be Batman. At number 9, The Corpse Bride. This is another one that I just watched last year to catch up on this entire list. And up until that point, Nightmare Before Christmas was like my one and only. But I was like, all right, I'll watch The Corpse Bride. I've heard a lot of good stuff about it. I like that it isn't just Nightmare Before Christmas again. It has its own feel. It has its own look. It has its own characters. And again, there's a lot of comparisons between the two. But I do like the plot in this one. I like that it's not black and white, but there's the blue side and his world, and then there's the colorful side, which is the underworld, which you would expect it to be the other way around, but not with Tim Burton. No. And it makes a lot more sense. And man, the Remains of the Day song specifically, that was one of the coolest scenes I have seen in any of his movies. I knew it was stop motion, but I didn't believe it because it was so seamless. And I think this is one of the first ones where they started to do a little bit more of a different technique for how to change the faces out, but still, it was incredibly well done. I'm not going to say I like the music as a whole more than Nightmare Before Christmas or that it even compares, but that one song for sure, Remains of the Day, and the piano solo that he does are beautiful and haunting and just very fun. It's very, Remains of the Day is very jivey, which is cool. And there was just a lot to like about this one, especially, the relationship between the main two. So there was a lot of cool stuff in this that I I knew it was going to be there. I didn't want to overtake Nightmare Before Christmas, but this one definitely has its merits, and I really liked it. I mean, it ends up at the top half of my list. At number 8, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Now, this one is going to rub a lot of people, I think, the wrong way. You're going to be like, how is this in the top half? Because it's so weird, and a lot of it people think isn't that good. I don't necessarily disagree that there's some stuff in it where I'm like, that was just ridiculous. Not even in like a good, over-exaggerated Tim Burton way, but in just like that was stupid.
Mom's your dad's. Dad? Papa?
That being said, there's a lot of stuff in this that I do like. I really came to like the Willy Wonka, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, whichever one you want to go with. I really came to like that idea. This whole factory just has rooms upon rooms of cool ways to make things, cool foods, cool processes. I like that idea a lot, and where the original Willy Wonka does that, this one I think takes the action parts, the aesthetic parts, and ramps it up. Of course, it's very different, but I like what it does in terms of the entertainment factor. And this is one of those examples that I go to when I'm talking to people about remaking versus interpretation for a movie. I don't want somebody remaking Wizard of Oz. You can't remake that movie and make it any better than it already is. However, I am cool with someone going, what if Tim Burton did this? Because it's not a remake necessarily, it's an interpretation, because you know it's going to be his own thing. He's not trying to redo it, he's trying to do it his own way. And I think Wizard of Oz would be very cool for him to do. So Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, again, is another interpretation that even if I don't love every interpretation he would do, I want to see what he's going to do, what ideas he comes up with. And I just think it's cool that there's this contrast between the 70s one and this one. Is it 60s? Oh god, when did that come out? Where the first one is very bright and sunny and happy, even if it's still kind of creepy. And this one, the interior is very dark and weird, and you got the classic like Tim Burton mountain spiral thing with when he walks into the factory, the main room. There's a lot that I did like about this as a kid, and that's part of why it's so high up, is because I watched as a kid. Again, one of the first couple that I ever did watch, and I liked it a lot. The part at the end when all the kids are walking out and you get to see what's happened to them, that part I was always super intrigued by. Not sure why, but I always was. And again, it's just a different interpretation. So I think it's really cool that we get to see a little bit of a different side of what this story could be, even though it's not a complete remake. I'm going with it's an interpretation. Number 7, Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. This is one of those that I saw a while ago, but I honestly probably remember the least about. And I went back and watched some of the scenes and some of the songs, and just remembered how good it is. The quality of it is very well done. And honestly, I would have thought at first, if I didn't see like the classic bags under the eyes and how some of them look and the aesthetic, the stylistic choices, I would have thought that this was done by the same guy who did Les Mis. Like, musically, it's pretty beautiful. And I'm surprised that, I know Tim Burton likes musicals in some fashion, but I didn't know that he was going to do one where a lot of it is the singing. And he does it in a very gentle way, even though it is also very violent. This is one of the movies on the list where I just think, yeah, that's real good. The production design, the songs, the score. I don't have a lot I can actually say about it because it's more about just the experience of watching this one and hearing the music. And of course, Johnny Depp can sing, and it's Johnny Depp in another role, but the man's a freaking chameleon. I just think that it's one of his better ones. And even if I didn't watch it as a child, watching it actually as an adult, I appreciated it even more. Number 6, Big Fish. This, I think, was the last feature that I had to watch. And I don't know why it took me so long to watch it. I think because it was just never available anywhere. This, I think, really starts the ones where I will go back and watch this over and over and over again. I appreciate and love what Big Fish does. I did not expect it to be that good. I think it's also really cool that it's different from what Tim Burton does in terms of it's not like necessarily this dark gothic story. It's a lot of tall tales. And, we've seen Tim Burton do some more circusy things in Beetlejuice and Dumbo, obviously. But what really gets me is not just that the tall tales are very cool and the whole time you're wondering not only the mysteries of, what's going on in the tales themselves and how's this going to wrap up, but you're also wondering, is he telling the truth? Maybe he is. Maybe this guy's really telling the truth and all these things actually happen. Or maybe none of it happened, and it gives you this meaning, to think on about, why don't we make life feel more special? Why don't we make it feel like it's an adventure every single day? And what I liked about the ending was that it kind of blends that. It gives you both. They didn't happen as he said that they did, but that doesn't matter, because what matters at the end is that he made so many friends, connected with so many people. He brought people together with just who he was, his personality, his story. I was really touched by this movie. I thought it was just so well done. Great message, very entertaining all throughout, really cool ideas for these little fables that he comes up with. It's fun, it's entertaining, it goes by very fast. It's just one of the best ones that he has done, by far. All right, we are coming up to the top 5, and at number 5 is Alice in Wonderland. This starts the ones that I really love. I think this came out right when I really started to appreciate Tim Burton. And this is another one that is interpretation, not a remake, but interpretation. And again, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. When Tim Burton does an interpretation, I'm gonna be there. I want to see what he does. I love the vibe of this movie, the whole vibe of the whole movie, because Alice in Wonderland, the original Disney, is cool, but it's really psychedelic and weird, and a little too weird for me. This one I liked because it's weird and it's dark, but it wasn't like off-putting for me. I love the designs of the Cheshire Cat and the Mad Hatter and Alice herself. I like that it is dark, not just because it's a Tim Burton movie, but because she has come back as an adult and she's not just a kid anymore in this bright, beautiful Wonderland, which is what it looked like before. Now it looks all dark and desolate and decrepit. I also like that they make it sort of like a war, I guess. That wasn't my favorite part. I definitely like the vibe and the beginning parts of it more, but it was very cool to make it sort of this whole battle with like the Jabberwocky and the knights and everything. And again, Danny Elfman's scores for this one, it's so haunting. It's very chilling. You got that choral aspect to it. It's definitely one that I play, around the Halloween season, because it just has that kind of eerie vibe, which is very, very cool. If I had to, say something that wasn't so great about it, I thought some of the designs were a little bit odd, like Tweedledee and Tweedledum I thought were really cool, until I realized that if you kind of focus on not being like they have a big head, but that their faces were just two guys' regular faces planted right in the center of the big head, you can't unsee that. And also the Queen of Hearts, with her head being super big and she's kind of goofy and cartoonish. I didn't love that.
But at the end of the day, I just love how epic and cool and eerie this one feels.
At number 4, Edward Scissorhands. I like this one a lot because of its romantic side. And I think there's not a lot of Tim Burton movies that have that. There's definitely some. It is a beautiful movie. And not gothic just in the way of things are dark, but a gothic in the way of interior struggles that this character has, being a Frankenstein figure, but he's not, violent or anything like that. It looks like he could be and he should be, but he's not. It's a very subtle movie. I actually don't know what I expected it to be. I did not expect it to be a slice of life movie, because for all intents and purposes, that's what it is for a lot of the movie, is just him, bumming around town and doing things and cutting hedges and cutting people's hair. And that part of, for me, is why, it's not in my top 3, because there's things in the other ones that are a little bit more entertaining for me. In this one, it gets, a little bit slow at times, but with that out of the way, it's a absolutely beautiful movie. It's so well made. The character of Edward Scissorhands is iconic. Winona Ryder dancing in the snow, that whole scene, and her, being one of Tim Burton's go-tos. I don't know why I never watched this one earlier on, and I'm glad I watched it when I did. So I think I watched it actually around Christmas because of the snow, and she's telling this at Christmas time. I just love this movie. It's just nice, and you can still get that kind of, again, gothic vibe from the others, but in a way that's, I don't know how else to say it. It's just romantic. At number 3, Ed Wood. I really struggled with whether this one should go at 2 or 3. This is one that I watched just last year for the first time, and I absolutely loved it. Namely for the fact that it's about filmmaking, and obviously I love film and filmmaking. Also just because of Johnny Depp's performance as Ed Wood. He is so enthusiastic, even though he is a terrible filmmaker. He's so enthusiastic about the filmmaking process and meeting actors and legendary actors that nobody cares about anymore, that you can't help but just love him. There is something to be said for watching a big movie set, but it's so much more fun to watch an indie movie set of people who are just there to have fun, to be creative, to try new things, to try and make something convincing with just a little bit of materials and resources that they have, and just go out and make something stupid. And that is what this movie is sort of about. He thinks he's making masterpieces, he's not. But the whole movie with these stars and him going around Hollywood and, you know, talking with big directors and big actors, it's just really cool. And the fact that it's black and white, again, feels very Tim Burton, but it also feels very like it's harkening back to, you know, these old Hollywood movies and these old monster movies specifically. And of course, the relationship that he strikes up with Bela Lugosi makes for basically the entire emotional crux of the movie, because he strikes this balance between, I need somebody to be in my movies and you're a huge actor, but also we're kind of friends, and like, you know, he can rely on me for things. And as it got into the movie more and more with that, it becomes sadder in a way, but also a little bit more beautiful, because he's kind of reinvigorating Bela Lugosi's acting career and his confidence in himself. This one is so much fun. It's so great. Definitely one of Tim Burton's best that he's ever done. Really love Ed Wood, and I'm very excited to go watch it again, because I have not seen it since sometime last year, and I want to watch it again. All right, I'm thinking for the top 2, now that we are finally here, I gotta break out The Nightmare Before Christmas hat. I have never once worn this. I don't even know where I got this from. It's just been sitting in my closet, and I saw it, and I was like, well, hell yeah. Number 2, Sleepy Hollow. I think it's fitting that the top 2 are the ones that I watch at Halloween every year. Like, that's probably why they are my top 2. And Sleepy Hollow is one that I have come to love more and more every year that I watch it. For what I've said for all of these, and what we know about Tim Burton, is the vibe, the aesthetic. I could say it over and over and over again. You're probably sick of hearing me say it, but it's true for this one, even more so because there's this added legend and colonial town aspect that we don't really get in any of his other ones. And that adds a whole layer of this Halloween feeling because of, obviously, the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, like the animated one, but also for the fact that it feels just fall. Even if it's not Halloween, it feels very fall. And the Sleepy Hollow Headless Horseman legend is such a cool one. It's so iconic, and you can do it in so many ways. And I very much like Johnny Depp's character in this one of Ichabod Crane, because up until that point when I watched this movie, Ichabod Crane for me was just the shovel-footed, long-nosed guy from the cartoon. In this one, he's a lot quirkier. I mean, he's definitely quirky in that one, but he's a lot quirkier, but he's also a lot more methodic. It's not what I would have expected from an Ichabod Crane, and Johnny Depp's rendition of him is very cool. Specifically, my favorite, one of my favorite scenes of the movie especially, is in the forest when he's doing his investigation and he pulls out his bag and he's got all of his tools. A lot of these gadgets there are very steampunk, and they're a little bit awkward and, you know, rusty. They're not quite polished. I loved all of that. So yeah, I'm not going to draw this one out because it's exactly what I've already said is why I like this movie. The vibe, the setting. Christina Ricci is in this movie, and she's amazing. Another horror icon and Tim Burton icon. And then, of course, just because of the fact that it's a mystery. You know, there's this mystery revolving around who is controlling the Headless Horseman, who is the Headless Horseman, and what happened with Ichabod Crane in his past, because he keeps having all these flashbacks, which are very beautifully shot, by the way. It just has everything. At number 1, Beetlejuice. Now, I actually talked a little bit about this in my Beetlejuice review, so, you know, you already know my thoughts on this, but of course this is my favorite because it basically combines everything that Tim Burton does so well. Gothic, weird, circusy, fun, depressing, but also lighthearted. It's not just, oh, it's dark or it's really colorful, but it's wacky. Patterns and colors and costuming, architecture especially, and then even in the music, which, again, Danny Elfman freaking blowing it away with the music in this one. It is one of the most fun. It feels like you're going on this weird ride, and that is exactly what Beetlejuice is. It's definitely up there with his probably top 3 most iconic movies. You can't help but love the character of Beetlejuice every time he's on screen, which is one of those movies where he's not on screen for that much. It's really like 14 minutes or something, but he chews up every second that he's on there. This is especially my favorite scene of his.
What are your qualifications?
Well, I attended Juilliard. I'm a graduate of the Harvard Business School. I travel quite extensively. I lived through the Black Plague, and I had a pretty good time during that. I've seen The Exorcist about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it. Not to mention the fact that you're talking to a dead guy. Now, what do you think? You think I'm qualified?
The best part is that he's not even the main character. The Maitlands are the main characters, and I love them. I love their sort of very nonchalant reaction to dying. I think that's very funny. This movie is very dark, but it takes itself not so seriously. It makes it kind of fun. I love the rules of the world and them kind of finding them out as they go in the book and the underworld and the trawling the chalk door. All of that is just so much fun. You can't get out of this movie and not praise Winona Ryder as Lydia Dietz for being just that emo kid, but she's the staple emo kid who obviously still cares about people, but she's just so enamored by the dark and obviously the strange and unusual because she herself is strange and unusual. Not a minute is wasted in this one. Burton puts all of his techniques and everything into this one, and then of course we get the cool sequels from it as well, maybe sequels. It's just one of the coolest worlds that he came up with. I love this movie, and I did not ever think that I would say that because I didn't start watching it until a couple of years ago, and it became one of my new Halloween movies to watch every year. That was the one that I tacked onto, and now I watch it every year, and it's so much fun. Okay, well, I have talked for entirely too long about Tim Burton. I think I might have said the words aesthetic and style and I think and definitely and obviously and gothic about 14 million times. But it was worth it because Tim Burton, one of the best directors that we have ever had. Nobody's ever going to compare to his style without his name coming up and being like, you know what, I think you just did a Tim Burton. He has made so many movies that you can watch at any time for those weird people who need to fall asleep to something creepy, but it's not going to scar them. Don't get me wrong, those people that need to be scarred before they fall asleep, I don't know why. But this is like that really great middle for those people who want something eerie and Halloween and really appreciate that, but they don't want to be scarred. He gives you just fun, wacky, macabre movies. And I've really grown to appreciate that in all of his films. Now, just because I know some of you are probably curious, with Wednesday, where would I put that in the ranking? I'm thinking somewhere between Sleepy Hollow, Ed Wood, Edward Scissorhands, somewhere in there, because I really like Wednesday. I have now seen it 3 times all the way through, which, if you know me in TV shows, I suck at watching TV shows. That's crazy. That's impressive that in 3 years I watched it 3 times. That's how much I love it. So it would go somewhere up in there. But that is all of my thoughts, at least as quick as I could, thoughts on 20 movies, 2 shorts, and a TV show from one of the most unique directors that we have out there today. Let me know in the comments below your favorites. What is your ranking, if you have that, or your top 5? What do you love most about Tim Burton and Danny Elfman for his scores? I'm very excited to hear your thoughts. I want to talk about this. And if there's any of these movies that I talked about that you want me to go into in a little bit more depth on, different aspects of it that I didn't get to, let me know in the comments below, and I can absolutely put that on the slate to talk about those in a little bit more depth. Well, I hope you guys have a great Halloween in April for those of you who celebrate the weird little group of us. And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and Halloween right in the middle. I'll see you guys later.
Jump in the line, rock your body in time.